I'm an introvert. I don't like to go places. I don't like to do things. I like to work. But the only time I really feel free is when I'm shaping metal. Like, I don't care if anybody else likes what I do, but for me as a person and my own sanity, it's what I'm on this planet to do. Welcome to my shop. This is kind of our showroom introduction when people walk in the front door. This is kind of what they're greeted with. Here is a chassis research TE440 replica that I built. I did the chassis on it, I think in 2009 for a buddy of mine, and he kind of ran out of room and it was being stored here. So as I started running out of room, I'm like, hey man, do you care if I stand this thing up? So this is what we have. So this is the Roadster Roadster. It's based on an A.J. Watson Indy car, but the client I originally built it for wanted a two-seater street car, so we changed some stuff around with it. It had a flathead V8 with a Hillborn EFI injector on it, a 5-speed, quick change rear end, and then it was involved in an accident that kind of totaled the car out. So I ended up buying it back from the insurance company and him, and I rebuilt it, and now it's a race car. So I take it to vintage dirt track events, hill climbs. It was at the Race of Gentlemen once, even though Mel got mad that it was there. I mean, it's been to Bonneville a couple times as my commuter. So now I just take it all over and enjoy it as a car. And then I have my Shelby Daytona replica that usually lives here if I'm not out road tripping across the country in it. I'm just a fabricator and a metal shaper. It depends on who you ask. Some people will tell you I'm known for metal shaping. Some people will say tube chassis. Some other guys will say traditional hot rod chassis. In the beginning, it was, traditional hot rod stuff. I kind of evolved into, making door skins and quarters for those, and which then led to more exotic stuff like aluminum bodied race cars and exotic European stuff. So this is the main work area. I specialize in kind of early traditional type hot rods that have a modern twist on it with a lot of detail and craftsmanship stuff, and I kind of evolve into other projects as well. So I'm doing a 68 Mustang convertible for a guy. It's got a Boss 429 in it, full tubular chassis I designed and built. So it's kind of not a Riddler type car, but not a Pro Touring either. He wants a factory concept. It's a little outside my normal box. This is a 49 shoebox that's been here a while. It was chopped previously, sectioned previously, and I'm kind of going back and correcting things and taking it to the next level. But I'm redoing all the inner structure to take it from a post car and making it a hardtop, and refining the chop and refining the lines, and just remaking most of the body from scratch. This is a 1958 Lotus 7. It's been road raced its entire life, so it's kind of rough around the edges, which makes it even cooler because it's a real deal race car. It was in a front end collision on the racetrack, and he brought it in to have the front edge of the nose replaced. So I made the new nose, kind of got it ready to weld on, and the old nose had some cracks and some other issues, so we decided to just build a whole new nose from scratch. I tend to get into a lot of weird aluminum bodied race car stuff, like I did a 61 Aston Martin DB4 Zagato quarter a couple years ago. Another good one that kind of got a lot of attention because the whole car was polished to a mirror. Kind of lucked out in the beginning. I wanted to build Model A for myself. I knew nothing about hot rods. I went to vocational school for welding and machining. I knew how to do basic machining processes. And I met this old guy who'd been building hot rods since the 50s. And he's like, man, you're pretty good at this. You should quit your job. And that's exactly what I did. So at 20 years old, I quit my production TIG welding job and just opened up a shop, and it's been downhill ever since. So this is a 3031 Model A, kind of a traditional build again with some more modern stuff, remaking the quarters from scratch, raising the wheel wells up. It's gonna have a small block Chevy in it, just a really good around town driver. He's not going for a show car. This one's his beat around town car. And then it's a 33 5-window coupe, really traditional Bonneville style look. He wanted a heavy chop, flathead V8, 3-speed. It's gonna be a really cool car. I like to show everything in the bare metal process as I can. That way I'm not hiding anything from the body shop or the client, and they know exactly what they're getting. There's nothing hidden under filler or primer. No, so I don't have any background or education in metal shaping. I have undiagnosed ADHD, so I have all these coping mechanisms of figuring out loopholes to make things simple. Metal shaping to me just makes sense because I can physically touch the problem. And I break everything down into 5 basic steps. You can shrink it, stretch it, cut it, bend it, weld it. That is it. With my lack of education and formal training, if you break it down to those simple steps, it's not that complicated. You just have to arrange everything in the certain process to get from A to B. I don't do a ton of high-end machine work, but I think every shop needs a Bridgeport, at least one. If nothing else, it's a really good oversized drill press. I've got my old South Bend lathe for turning down whatever we need. Again, I don't do a ton of machine work, but every shop needs a lathe. It's probably, I'd say, from the 50s. Once I started getting equipment through Baileigh, it kind of opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. And the thing about Baileigh when I got into metal shaping is we didn't have all these companies making metal shaping equipment. But 20 years ago, you had to find a Pettengill or a Yoder buried in the pigsty on a farm and dig it out and completely re-engineer and rebuild it yourself. The fact that I could look in a catalog and I could call Baileigh and say, hey, I need this hammer and I need this tooling with it for this job I need to do. It really helped me out. I think it really kind of changed the path of my career. All together. This area is kind of my metal shaping area. A lot of my Baileigh equipment stays here. Pretty much everything I need to do in the shaping side is all in one unit. And I set it up to where I can efficiently walk around each machine, work on what I need, and try to be as productive and efficient while shaping as I can. So on my MH19, this was the first real metal shaping piece of machinery I'd ever had. This kind of opened a lot of doors for me in the metal shaping industry. I had used it at the Baileigh classes when I went up and worked and helped out there. And then I kind of fell in love with the concept. So when I got it, everything instantly changed. I was able to make door skins, roof inserts, one-piece quarter panels. So it really kind of changed the way my mind worked and how I could function as a metal shaper. This is my Baileigh bead roller that was designed by Chris Rush. I don't do a ton of bead rolling stuff anymore. I've switched over to all Pullmax and Linux type work. A bead roller is a very handy and versatile tool to have in the shop. It doesn't always have to be a big fancy one. There's other options out there. But I really like this one, how it had the deep throat, the chain drive, and then this quick release handle. So that was one reason I wanted to go with this one for when I need it. The smaller ones are great, but there's not a lot of times you're doing a complete flat panel. So the deep throat really aids in shaping. My 1940s Gorton pantograph, that's kind of an engraving machine. So you put in the letters or the design here on the back platen, and then you trace it with the stylus, and you can change the slides, and you can scale everything. So you can engrave ID tags or parts. So it's kind of like a CNC engraver, but from the 30s, 40s. Kick shrinker stretcher. One thing I really like about this one is if you use a lot of the older machines, like an Urco, it's got little pins and stuff that line up to change all the tooling out. The feature for this that I like is everything's held in with magnets. So if you want to switch from shrinking and stretching, you can pop those guys out and you just flip them around. You can change the tooling out in a matter of a couple seconds. So this is my Linux reciprocating machine. It's similar to a Pullmax, but it was US base made. There's a Linux, a Baker. They were all made by the same parent company. I think it's from the 60s. The process is the same as a Pullmax, just a little bit different of a machine. When I started in the shaping industry, I was very wheel heavy. Growing up and seeing that kind of stuff, that's just what you thought you did. If you wanted to build bodies and build panels, you had to get a wheeling machine or an English wheel as most people know them. So when I got this machine, I did all of my shaping on it. And then once I kind of went to the dark side and used power hammers, I kind of never went back. Every once in a while this gets used to shape stuff. Mainly now I use it for forming, and that's what the rubber upper wheel is for. I just put form into my panels. So I found all this stuff in a building, and I've never seen a cast iron blacksmith tong rack before. I also use it to hold all my hammers and mallets and that kind of stuff. When it came down to looking for a new brake for the shop, it was either a finger brake or a press brake, and this one fit my needs more, and it was actually more budget friendly than just a standard manual box pan brake. I went out on a limb and kind of got this machine, and it's exceeded all my expectations, and it's actually been a really valuable asset to have in the shop. The main focal point, it's my MH37 HD. As you can see, it is quite the large machine. The reason I upgraded to having a machine of this size was mainly to be able to do larger panels. Now I can do full roof inserts in one piece instead of breaking it down into two. It's just a larger machine and it hits so much harder, so I can shape that much faster and be that much more efficient. This machine's not necessarily for everybody because it's so big and it's so powerful, but the option, if you need that, is great to be able to have access to. Then, if you take a trip back over 100 years, this is an original Pettengill #1. It's from 1909 to 1912-ish. I've talked to Hans over at Pettengill Machine about it. It's got a lot of neat history. It was originally in the Bellevue Brewing Company building in Cincinnati, Ohio. and they closed in 1918 from Prohibition, and it hung in their basement until I got it about 5 years ago. But it's just a cool piece of local history and metal shaping history. You know, I've been in business, 2023 will make 17 years. I've gone from doing things the hard way, which I think makes people a better craftsman, to understanding how valuable efficiency and quality is. Yeah, I could make a quarter panel with a hammer and dolly and a tucking fork, and it might take me 3 weeks to get to the same way I could produce it with a power hammer in 3 days. Yeah, the machinery can be very expensive, but the efficiency over time is where that comes into play. Rotex turret punch. This came from a school for the deaf, and then it was also from the Air Force, so I've got all the ID tags on it. Handy tool to have in the shop. The history kind of lends to my facility. You know, it's interesting stuff to look at with a soul to its own. So this is a 1940 Cadillac LaSalle. We're gonna do the chop on the top, fender skirts, traditional custom. The chassis and suspension are gonna be kind of modern. He wants air ride on it, a little bit bigger wheel. I've cut down the roof so far. We took 4 inches out of it overall in vertical height and working on getting the post all lean back. From here back, I will reshape the whole new roof. So new sail panels that blend into the quarters a lot better. I'm gonna reuse the factory opening for the back window. Just try to keep it real traditional, but a high quality. Back here is kind of more my dirty work and tube bending stuff. So I also have my 2x4 mandrel bender here. So this is where I bend all my frame rails for everything we do in-house and for other shops and individuals that need material bent for their frame projects. I could always do more bending, but I'm only one person, so only so much I can do in a day. All my CNC plasma cut stuff. I do all my own brackets in-house. If it's gonna be a mass-produced thing, I'll send it out and have it lasered. Design everything in AutoCAD, export it out to the CNC, and I'll burn out my own brackets and tabs for race car applications. I know I wouldn't be where I am without the social media exposure Baileigh has given me. Whether you want to admit it or not, I really think social media, and especially Baileigh's branding on Instagram especially is kind of blown that out into what it is today. Whether you think it's good or bad, it's been impactful on the industry. This is my Bonneville Streamliner project. It's going to be a 4-cylinder diesel. I kind of got really complicated on this one. So all the suspensions, bell crank cantilever, it's all adjustable. Everything's doubler plated. It's going to be a full aluminum body. It's styled after the Redhead Streamliner, which I think is the sexiest car to ever be on the Salt. So lastly and leastly, let me show you the Bonneville Roadster we're working on. So this is a personal car for me and my race team. Man, this car is exceeding all of my expectations. A 27 Model T Roadster, full tube chassis, flathead V8. I'm getting pretty carried away with show car stuff on it. It's kind of silly that I'm going to the extremes I am on a race car, but I think race cars can be just as nice as show cars. They can be kind of dual purpose as long as you take care of everything. So this is an XF gas modified Roadster. XF is for the vintage American-made flathead V8, and gas modified Roadster is it runs on a vent gas, and it's a modified Roadster. The record in the class is currently 166 and some change. It's held by the Screaming Mimi team. I don't think we're gonna go out and light the world on fire this season. Ideally, when I take it out for Speed Week in August, I wanna get the car shook down, make sure everything functions, you know, it handles well, and then we can kind of see where we're at power-wise. Then we can figure out some power adders, maybe tweak the aero a little bit if needed. As far as my legacy and what I want it to be and what it'll actually be, I think are two different things. I just want to build what I like the way I want it and have a certain level of quality and be remembered for the fact that I was passionate about the craft and always focused on the final product. I don't hide things. I don't cut corners. You know, you can look at it and be like, man, that Mike guy, he's a jerk. I would never want to invite him over to my house to meet my parents. But man, he built some cool shit.